to Regulated and Relational, a bi-monthly podcast brought to you by the Attachment and Trauma Network. Today, Julie and Ginger have Rick and Doris Bowman in the studio to talk about their brand new book, Your FBA is a Fantasy. Listen as they unpack why traditional FBAs and behavior plans often fall short and how to truly shift towards regulation. Let's jump right in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Regulated and Relational, our podcast produced by the Attachment and Trauma Network. I'm Julie Bean.
And I'm Ginger Healy.
And we're excited to share with you from both our personal experiences and our professional knowledge what it truly means to be attachment-focused, trauma-informed, and how we can help children impacted by early childhood trauma. Today, we've got some very special guests and friends in the studio. They've been longtime friends of ATN, Rick and Doris Bowman. We're so happy that they're here, and we're excited about what we're going to talk about today. Ginger, can you introduce everyone to Rick and Doris?
Yes, I'd be so happy to. Rick and Doris Bowman, known nationally as Team Bowman, are expert speakers, trainers, consultants, educators, thought leaders in trauma-informed care, resilience practices, and effective interventions for youth with chronic challenging behaviors. Through Bowman Consulting Group, they translate cutting-edge neuroscience, polyvagal theory, and research on regulation into actionable, compassionate strategies that support educators, mental health professionals, families, and organizations. Together, they've become trusted voices in reshaping how schools and systems respond to children impacted by trauma and neurodivergence. As Team Bowman, Rick and Doris provide training, consultation, and coaching across the country in schools, facilities, and agencies. They specialize in facilitated IEPs, FBAs, and BSPs, which we're going to get into if you're wondering what all that language means.
All that initial.
Yeah. And they bring together families and schools as allies to create truly effective support for students. Their mission is rooted in a powerful belief that trauma does not define a child or a system. And with intentional science-informed practices, healing and resilience are always possible. We love that. And so we have just been so excited to talk to you about your new book that is coming out. Well, by the time this airs, it will be your newly launched baby. So let's talk about it. The title is Your FBA is a Fantasy. This is a guidebook to creating truly trauma-informed, neuro-affirming functional behavior assessments and behavior support plans. So, let's dive into this book. Let's talk about this I can say is a very needed book that will help a lot of educators and therefore help students. But what got you here? What brought you to knowing that this book was needed, especially when we're talking about traditional, functional behavior assessments and behavior plans? You boldly state that if they are traditional, and what has been happening, through the years and through the schools, is that these behavior plans and behavior assessments can actually harm rather than help students. And so let's start there. Who wants to go first?
Okay. All right. Well, I'll share about I think the turning point for us. So, things come together at certain times for certain reasons, right? And things converged where I had been running a district-wide program for middle school level students, all the students with the big behaviors, right? I mean, it was mental health, trauma issues, neurodivergence, anything that led to big behaviors. And so it was a self-contained program. And what I saw in that program was I saw kids who had files that had plan after plan after plan after plan in them that were pretty much a new version of the previous plan that hadn't worked. And to me, that was heartbreaking. And what we've really come to articulate since that time is that what I was experiencing, what I was seeing at that time was that when we do that, when traditional, conventional operant kinds of systems fail, a reward consequence or a contingency system or any of those types of things fail, and then we turn around and, okay, we just need to make another plan, but it's kind of the same. It just has different rewards or whatever.
Right.
We're shaping identity.
Mm.
We are shaping identity. And that to me, like honestly, most of the time when I talk about this in a training, I need tissues nearby because I got the kids when they came to middle school level and their identity was I'm one of those kids,
Oh, wow.
right? It's I'm the kid that doesn't get the stuff, that misses out on the rewards, that doesn't get the privileges, that doesn't get the nice notes home, that doesn't, whatever it is that they've experienced. But think about it from their perspective. When plan after plan is failing, they're not standing there thinking, wow, the school's behavior plan has really failed me,
Right.
Right.
right? No, they're
Right.
thinking, it's me.
It's me.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm too messed up. I'm the kid who's too broken.
Mm-hmm.
And all these adults are trying to fix me and it's not working. And then we see them give up. And adults we become so frustrated as adults, like they won't try. They're just giving up. I'm like, yeah, we kind of sent them down that road because we taught them that it wasn't worth trying because, the approach we were using wasn't the approach that was needed for them, that was actually going to work for them. And so that really led to it. And then we ended up with a behavior plan put in front of us by a school district. We were going to train. We said, hey, could you send us a behavior plan? This is a very progressive area of the country that I won't name because I won't shame them. But they sent us a behavior plan, and this was the behavior plan goal. This was Ruby. She was 7 years old, and her behavior plan goal was that she would learn to accept predetermined consequences without having a behavioral episode. Yeah, I looked like you did, Ginger. Like I I was just like I had no breath left in me at that moment. I called my friend in Southern California, but I'm not going to say what school district. I called her and I was like, either we make a training about this or I light myself on fire in the middle of, the biggest street because something has to get the attention of folks who are thinking that like we're going to punish kids down this road, we're going to reward them down this road, like somehow, and all that's doing is actually driving the shame deeper. It's driving the fear deeper. It's activating the nervous system to create more behavior. And we're pushing them further down the path of probably not making it through school.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the fact that I think for me, then ultimately, the fact that when I think about it, the vast amount of kids, the kids who are struggling, if we take all the kids who are struggling in school, the vast number of kids who are struggling the most are going to end up in this funnel, the FBA behavior plan funnel. And if all we're doing are traditional approaches that activate their stress response, that cause them to feel re-traumatized, that, a lot of the things that we know from neuroscience are happening, then on the converse of that, if we can shift that, we are making a monumental shift. And so it was just really exciting to think about the potential.
That's great.
I think that sums it up.
Yeah, no, that sounds like an incredible turning point. So glad you did not set yourself on fire. That went the other way.
I was that upset for a little bit, but you have to get
were-
someone's attention, right? Like,
Right.
what do you need to do to get the attention of like, this is not working,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And if her goal is to learn to accept consequences, what is she going to look like when she's 12 or 19? Or how about 25 when no one can follow her around threatening to take her privileges away?
Right. Right.
Right. And she's out in the community and she doesn't have the skills she needs now to navigate life.
Exactly.
And you're labeling her as, well, obviously you're going to need consequences because that's who you are. It's like you're just never a chance.
Yep.
It was devastating, honestly, it really was.
I think one of the other things too that I would add would be, as I thought about it, was that these children that we're talking about typically have trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that trauma, so we're not doing anything to help heal the trauma. We're actually activating the nervous system more. And to me the thing that's so important about this is that they're going to end up going through school, leaving school, and with a dysregulated nervous system, living out of their trauma. And we know what the adverse childhood uh, experiences study tells us, that these children actually are have greater probability for disease, mental health disorders, physical disorders, and even a shorter lifespan. So
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
this is so much more important than just getting it right at school and making sure that we're not creating more dysregulation. But the longer we wait and we don't make the right kind of trauma-informed interventions, we're losing our opportunity to really save the lives of these children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you hopped in to say that, Rick, because that's where I was coming next, was that, a lot of times we as educators look at this behavior and we're thinking, well, we have to fix the behavior. It's defiance, it's, disrespect, it's all of those things. But you just reframed that for us in a big way for most of these kids, right?
Yeah, I think, we've focused so much on compliance and focus so much on behavior. And we know that, well, really all we get out of compliance or, out of punishment and rewards is compliance. We may get
Mhm.
temporary compliance, but we're really not changing anything, right? And then the other thing that happens too is that when we use punishment and rewards with kids that have been through a lot of toxic stress and trauma, we're actually activating the nervous system more. And so we're likely to see even more behavior.
Mhm.
And so we're missing our chance to really build what they need, and that's safety and connection. And that's a big part of our trauma-informed behavior plans, is that we know how important connection is. We know how important that we have to work on the nervous system, and we have to do certain things. And a lot of these things are just simple things that we can do to help build more regulation in the child, and
Mhm.
as well as more co-regulation in ourselves as educators.
Mhm. I was thinking too about just the fact that one of the things that I think went really unrecognized for a long time, and I think that, when I sit in a room full of educators, generally I'm looking around and I'm thinking, like, these are all people who want to do well for kids.
Right.
Yes.
They want
Absolutely.
to see kids do better for the right reasons. And if they realized that when we use these approaches that activate the nervous system, when we use contingency systems, for example, we are actually recreating the feelings of trauma. It's re-traumatization. It's I'm the victim of something. I don't have control. Someone has control over me. They can hurt me. They can take things away from me. And it's actually reactivating that experience of being the victim of trauma. And I know when I realized that, like, I had some grieving to do. I grieved who I had been as a teacher early on. And I wasn't a mean teacher. I wasn't mean to kids,
Right.
but I
You were trying to
had
help them.
certain ways that I thought things needed to be done because that's what I was taught to
Mhm.
do in my behavior management class or whatever in my master's program. And, recognizing that, like, in those moments, they really needed to find their safety in me, not find like a threat of a consequence. That was not helpful,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, I think that's something too that as teachers come to understand that, I think we see a lot more embracing of these practices when they just can understand the message of really the neuroscience and the nervous system.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's one thing that you do really well in this book. We were lucky enough to get a little bit of an advanced copy so that we could review it. And you weave in neuroscience, polyvagal theory, heart math, and you do it in ways that feel really accessible and practical. And I really want to highlight that because educators, we all know, have a lot on their plate, and a thick, hard book might not ever be able to get through. But if you can do it in a way that makes sense and is practical, in ways that they're already, in fact, doing some of their strategies, but understanding why, or just making that paradigm shift, I just think that is so key. It's not a hard read, and I love, but it is based in that good neuroscience that I think is so important for educators to know about their own brains, to know about kid brains, and to teach that. So I don't know. Do you want to kind of spend a minute on that?
Yeah, absolutely. You're making my heart glow here because it sounds like we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish. I think, yeah, what you were saying, first of all, we've had so many people who have done reviews and endorsements that have come back to us and said, this is an everybody book. This is not for the people who write FBAs and behavior plans. The first 11 chapters are for everyone. We're going to do a book study in our school district, whatever, and sneak peek preview. I think we're going to end up needing to do a companion guide to this one that's just for the teachers, the general teachers.
Okay, good.
Down the road. But the idea, I think, Ginger, of bringing all those things together, I think one of the key things about, one of the key truths for educators really is that to understand that the body anticipates. The body anticipates. That is one of, I think, the most important recognitions we can have, because the body anticipates, then the nervous system takes over and starts driving the train. And then we think the brain is in charge, that we're cognitively directing things, when actually Rick gave a great example to someone. He said, if I told you that right outside our door, there is a rabid German Shepherd out there just waiting, and come on out, I'm going to take you out there and you'll be fine, right? And you would fight me tooth and nail to not go out that door, right? You would be in survival response of like, no way am I walking out that door, and there may be no German Shepherd at all.
Right.
You're fighting me. Why? Based on the fact that the body takes over and says, I'm responsible for your survival.
Right.
I'm going to take care of you. And so, one of the things I like to think about it, like an analogy that I like to use with staff, is that for a lot of kids who've had a lot of toxic stress, trauma experiences, their nervous system has been impacted so that it's highly sensitized. I think of it as like having the smoke detector mounted over your toaster.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going off like your house is burning down and all you did was make toast.
Right.
And that is like the teacher who goes, hey, could you hang your jacket in your cubby? And all of a sudden things are flying across the room. They're being called things they don't even know, they've never heard before. And kids running out of the room. And they're like, what happened? And so understanding that, I think that we have to first address regulation. We have to first address the nervous system. When we're approaching a child, if that child has had the kinds of experiences we're talking about, their body is already anticipating danger and trouble. And we've all experienced it. We've all been in a room with someone who walks in and you're like, I could leave now, right? Or somebody who walks in a room and you're like, oh, I'm so glad they're here.
Right.
And you didn't have to think about it and think about the last time you saw them, or like your body just knows I'm safe, or let's get out of here. And so I think honoring the fact that these children are acting out of ways that their body has developed and adapted for survival purposes, or to keep them emotionally, physically safe. And that if we can, I like to think of it this way, is if we can recognize that, there's two things I want to say. Shift away from our all of our approaches have been around getting kids to stop it, right? There's a behavior, stop it. There's a behavior, stop it. Well, what if the behavior is activation of trauma and actually it needs to be discharged, not stopped, discharged? And so we're just going, oh, stop that, stop that. That's just like putting more gas in the balloon, right?
Right.
Until it's going to pop.
Right.
And instead, if we take a different approach and we honor, and I like to think of it as working with their energy instead of against it. I always think of Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi's like, wax on, wax off, right? And he teaches Daniel, when your opponent comes at you, you move with their energy instead of trying to come up against it. And with a lot of our kids, we've done this.
Right.
Instead, if we could look at it and go, this is what's happening in their body right now. How can we work with it in a way that helps them feel safe, that helps them discharge the activation? Ultimately, then we're going to build new pathways. We're going to build new neural pathways in the brain. We're going to we're going to repattern the nervous system. And that's where we're going to get the results we're looking for. There's no other way. There is no other way. I have an expression we use in our trainings: you can't cheat the brain, right? Like you can want to go straight for the cortex, right? Good luck with that. Like I'm guilty. I did it a million times as a teacher, right? It's like, let me reason with you. No, if you skipped the regulation part, if you skipped the connection and safety part of relationship, you can want all day long to go straight for the cortex and say, I don't have time. But do you have time to like circle this mountain 85 more times? Because that's what you're going to do if you don't deal with it from a bottom up.
Right. To put
approach.
3 inches of behavior plans in a folder that have not worked. Yeah. Because you're doing the same thing.
But you have one in the file.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't even say, I should have said this out of the gate. So, we say your FBA is a fantasy and we share in our sessions, we actually mean it. The definition of a fantasy is that something you wish for is actually true. And so when we're in a room, I can ask 200 administrators, I'm like, how many of you have a behavior plan in a file back in your school and you wish it was actually working?
Right.
100% of hands go up.
If
anybody's hand, some of them are like 2 hands, right?
Yep.
And if anybody isn't, I'm like, I need to talk to you afterward because either you're not being honest or you have a magic wand that we all need to know about.
Right.
Because we all have them in the file. We wish they were working. We genuinely want them to be working, but they're not. And so, yeah. So it really is a fantasy.
Right. Yeah. And for those folks that are out there who, that obviously we know because we've looked at the book that this is a book that every educator needs. But for the special educators, the ones who are working with FBAs and have come at that from the lens where the function of the behavior is, and then it's all of the things that set you up for compliance, right? Things like attention or avoidance or all of those things, that it sets, and the system is set that way, right? For the which is what, when you all talk about it being a compliance driven system, then that's really at the core of what you're talking about. Can you talk to us a minute about how we shift folks, how we shift their thinking, and then also how the educators who are working in these compliance driven systems, what can they do when they recognize that they're making the shift themselves, other than set themselves on fire at intersections? What can they do? Right.
I don't recommend that. I really, that was just my emotional state.
I totally understand, but I'm thinking
dysregulated.
The frustration level is there, right? For a lot of educators, because once you see that this is the way, then helping other people embrace that and shift the whole system is sometimes the hardest part, right?
Well, I'm going to let Rick answer this, but I want to tell you, Julie, in that moment with that behavior plan, there was kind of a sense of panic for me because I'm looking at this and I'm actually thinking, they sent this to me as an example. They voluntarily sent this to me thinking that
It was a good example.
there was like, yeah, like I might not, you know, there might not be a bit of a struggle with this. And so that for me was like somebody just hit me with a, battering ram. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was just like if they were so not aware of all the damaging aspects of this, we've got so far to go.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it got us fired up. Like we came home and this baby was happening because it was training first and then a book, because we're like, we have got to make a way to help people make their way to this shift in a very tangible way. Not just like, hey, do your thing trauma informed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can't quite put all that together.
I think one of the ways to help get educators to shift the system is to really help them understand the power that they actually have as a teacher or as an administrator to be able to work with a child in a way that will change their nervous system functioning. And that's why we talk a lot in our book about the why before we get to the what this is what you do, because we really feel like you need to understand why kids do what they do, and you need to understand that, just as Doris was talking about, when a behavioral response is often no more than a an adaptive response to what the nervous system is telling them, what they're feeling or thinking.
Mhm.
And then they practice that over and over and over again and run those neural networks to now that becomes the familiar response to different expectations, perhaps, that the teacher's asking the child to meet. And and to help teachers understand that our focus doesn't need, we got to get our focus off the behavior, because what you focus on grows. And instead, let's focus on what are the expectations that the child's not meeting because of what's happening in the nervous system, because of the lack of neurocognitive skills that have been affected by trauma, toxic stress, and to help them realize that if they would just build more safety, predictability,
Mm-hmm.
provide choice and control, work with a child in a mutual collaborative way, and this predictability to me is so vitally important, that they are predictable every day and that they're working on their own regulation, and that the child generally needs to feel that they're cared about, that you have empathy and compassion for them, that those simple things alone are going to change the whole system if we get
Mm-hmm.
together as educators and we realize that we have so much power in these simple tools to help children heal from trauma. And when people say, well, do you really think that's going to work? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always working. You just have to believe that
Mhm.
it may take
Stick with it.
time. You have to stick with it. You have to
Mhm.
be persistent
Yeah.
and realize again that, that none of these children are coming to our classrooms and going, you know what, I just want to be a failure today. I just want to be
Mm-hmm.
lousy.
They really
Right?
aren't. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
really aren't. But if we get so focused on their behavior, it's going to look that way to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to think that's what they're doing, right?
Right.
They just don't care. When in fact,
Mhm.
those most may be the kids that care the most.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And
And their
so,
defenses are up because they've been approached and disappointed so many times that they're looking at you through that lens, and they can't imagine that they could trust you and feel safety with you until there's a lot of repetition of that offer for safety and compassion and empathy. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
perfectly said, because there's got to be a lot of repetition. We know that the brain learns through patterned
Mm-hmm.
repetition processes, right? And just to walk up to a child and go, "Good morning. I'm so glad you're here." And
Yeah.
that child might go, "Get that away from me right now.
Right.
I don't want to talk to you. Shut up." And instead of going, "Okay, that child's just being defiant and
Mm-hmm.
oppositional and so on," going, oh, that child is in a dysregulated state. What
Right.
is happening inside that child's nervous system? And what they need from me is me to come up to them every day and respond to them in the same way.
Right.
Because over time, I'm going to become very predictable to
Yeah.
their nervous system, and that's going to help repattern it, and they're going to be able to now form a connection with me.
And the sense of threat decreases. I think
Yes.
that's key, right? When we're predictable, that sense of threat decreases because instead of anticipating, that's why I said I feel like anticipation is vital. It's like a core issue. Instead of anticipating humiliation, anticipating a threat of a consequence, now they anticipate this feels safe. My teacher comes up and says, hey, this looks hard. What's going on? Instead of, you need to get that out. If you don't do that, this is what's going to happen, yada, yada. And I think I'm going to just share one analogy.
Can I just say one other thing?
Yeah, go for it.
I think the system, because I say this, I know we
Yeah.
get excited about this.
I love it. I can feel the energy.
Well, I don't even know what I was going to say now. But anyway, I think one of the big changes in the system that we're trying to help teachers really understand is that we need to do something. Our old systems have gone directly at the cortex. We got to get academics done. We do. But that's been the focus. And if you can't do it, then we're going to use
Punish
some
you
form
into
of
it.
punishment or reward to try to
Yeah.
motivate you to do it. When in fact, where we really missed it, and where where the systems are changing, hopefully, is that we need to do something regulating before and regulate rhythmic, those sorts of things, right? Routines every day so build regulation first, then do academics. Because when we look at our classrooms now, we know that probably about 30 or 40% of our elementary school classrooms are filled with kids that have
Dysregulation.
that are in a dysregulated state. So
Right.
how are we going to do academics in a dysregulated state? We're not. So this is, I think, a big shift. And I think a lot of teachers are realizing that now, that if we did something that was regulating and co-regulating, that then we would begin to build that over time, and then we do academics. And that might only have to be 5 or 10 minutes every day.
Right. Yeah.
There's an analogy that I really love to use. I think it's one of the most simplest ones, but for teachers to grasp, educators, administrators, to grasp this idea that we have to take our focus off the behavior. So, if you think about a child who walks into school and they've experienced trauma, and they're what we call their private logic, their thinking is, I can't trust anyone. Nobody cares about me. Everything is unsafe. People don't like me. They think I'm a loser, blah, blah, blah. I can ask in a big room, right? What behavior might you see with that being their self-belief? And I will get hiding under a table and refusing to do work, running out of the room, being aggressive to the teacher, shutting down, self-harm, right? And it's just all, and then I stop and I say, so are you noticing anything? The behavior can be from here all the way over to here.
Right.
Yeah, everything from full-on shutdown and escaping the room to full-on aggression and cussing out the teacher. And so if we make a plan about a behavior,
right.
Okay, so what I call this, if any of y'all have ever been to a video game arcade, this is behavioral whack-a-mole. Right? We've all played the game with the mallet, and you hit a little gopher, and you hit it, another one pops up, and then you try to hit that one and another, and you cannot, right? You until you just go nuts, basically.
Right.
Like you can't. And if we continue to focus on behaviors, we're essentially like, okay, I extinguished chair throwing, but the reason chair throwing is happening is still there. Oh, now I extinguished profanity. Oh, but the reason we're having the profanity is still there. Now we have a plan about, I mean, it's just like insanity. And so we have to shift out of this focus on behavior and really focus in on these root cause issues.
Right. Exactly. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk. We're going to ask Doris and Rick to tell us what some of the things that they think are most important from their book. But I know what Ginger wants to ask. She wants to ask about the hope and the message that educators need to hear from the transformation. So we'll be talking about that too.
Okay.
Hey everybody, I'm Martin Sims, a member of the National Board of Directors of the Attachment and Trauma Network. And as our newest chair of our fundraising committee, I want to invite you to our second annual Trekking to Heal Trauma 5K. Now you can run or walk with us virtually from anywhere in the world in honor of World Trauma Day, October 17th. The Trek Day window is Friday, October 10th through Friday, October 24th to run virtually. We just need you to send us your photos and results. Now, 70% of the world, or people around the world, have had their lives changed by trauma. And studies show that childhood trauma leads to long-term health consequences in 1 out of every 3 adults. But together, we can bring the resilience, post-traumatic growth, and the hope. You can sign up as an individual, create a team of friends, or donate to support others trekking to heal trauma. Now, Trekking to Heal Trauma 5K registration is now open. Join us, and we can make a difference together. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. We're back with Doris and Rick Bowman, the team Bowman, to talk about their exciting new book, Your FBA is a Fantasy. It's got a secondary title that I'm struggling to pull up on my screen, but it's really important. It's a guidebook to creating truly trauma-informed, neuro-affirming functional behavior assessments and behavior support plans. So for all of you teachers out there, this is something that you need to look at right away. So Ginger, do you want to jump in here and get us started again?
Yeah, absolutely. As I've been listening, I have been feeling the hope, and I hope all of our listeners have too. But I think I want to dive deeper into that. And Rick, I want to ask you, because this is courageous work, right? It's transformational work. I want to know what you're seeing out there. You guys travel a lot. What gives you hope right now? And where do you think schools are headed?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is courageous work. It's always courageous to when you've gone through an education program that has told you this is the way that we use rewards, punishments, compliance is the goal. We've got to get academics done and all the other things that we were all taught. And now people are coming in and going, you got to make this big shift. And we know none of us, change is hard for all of us. And so the hope for me is that we are seeing so many teachers, educators, educational assistants, administrators that are now just really grabbing on to the concepts that we've been talking about today. And why? Because they have as much heart for the children as we do, as we all do, as you guys do. And it's there. So again, they are definitely grabbing onto this, and really we're seeing it. We're seeing people that are coming up to us after trainings and going, this was just amazing. This was the best training I've been to in 20 years. Some of them have said 30 years. And saying that we need this because we don't, we want to do well with our kids, but we just really don't know how. And so the understanding of the neuroscience we think is so vitally important. That's why our book is basically for anybody, that you don't have to be doing FBAs and behavior plans. It's going to help you in whatever role that you're in. But I think that, that we tell the teachers this, and what educators are in the room, we tell them that you are heroes because they truly are. And you're the ones that are in the trenches. You're the one. ones that are doing the hard work of working with kids that have severe trauma impacts, lots of challenging behavior every day, and that yet you're willing to stay in there with them and keep moving even with them with a lot of these things that we're teaching, even though oftentimes it feels like you're not making any progress at all. So
Well, I think that you hit on something very key, that this work, although so transforming and important, it is hard and exhausting. And so I think that's where I want to go next, Doris, is like, how do we help educators to be able to keep going and keep, especially when they're at that burnout point where they're just feeling, hopeless. And, I just always, I think of these educators. I've been in these rooms and I feel it. It is hard stuff. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I mean, I will say, that was a majority of my career. I set out to be a second grade teacher. My first job, I was emergency certified into a middle school special ed classroom. My second job, I was emergency placed into a district self-contained program for middle schoolers, and that essentially redirected my entire career for the next 20 years. And so I've been in some of those, I've been the teacher, I've been the classroom teacher. My final position was as a behavior consultant before we just got sort of sucked out of our jobs like a vortex into the work we're doing now. I think there's a couple different ways that we can approach this, that we have to bring them all together. One is that we have to do more collective care,
Good.
right? So really having an emphasis on relationship. It's everything we teach about how you work with kids is, this is our colleagues need the same thing. Like
Right.
Rick often says in training, we need connection as much as we need oxygen. And yet teachers go through their day in this little silo sometimes with their students. They come in, they deal with the students, they leave at the end of the day and maybe haven't even had a conversation or two with a colleague. And so teaching them how to set up systems that enable them to better care for one another within their school ecosystem. And then the other one that I think is actually vitally important, and Rick and I started really picking up on this prior to COVID. So we were traveling a ton all over the country, training on trauma-informed practices. And we would often have administrators say, my staff are becoming more and more receptive to learning this, but they can't stay regulated long enough to use it, what
Yes.
they've learned.
Yes.
And we really started recognizing that there was a lot that was needed in the way of helping. There's this kind of crazy assumption, and we speak to it in the book, but it's kind of like you're a grown-up now, you know how to be regulated. And, and we've even had these wonderful, like, these were friends of ours, administrators who would tell we talked about, a regulated adult's necessary to regulate a kid. And so then they turn and tell their staff, you're the adults and you need to be regulated when you get
Right.
here in the morning. Like,
Yep. Problem
well,
solved just by saying.
doesn't work any differently with adults than it does with the kids.
Yep.
But the issue there that we found, and I started attending like every self-care wellness session at every conference we ever went to for like 3 years, right? And I would leave kind of feeling like, well, okay, I just made another plan for how I'm gonna, take a walk after work, go buy and get my favorite chocolate at the store on the way home.
Mhm.
That was not supposed to be part of the plan, but generally was. But it's a great example of how here's what we tend to do is we identify things that help us feel better.
Mhm.
They might not be durable. They might not support our wellness. And what we really need is we really need practices that are sustainable. They create a sustained wellness and resilience within us. And that was why when we went down the path of becoming certified trainers in the HeartMath approach. And so um, we really see that as being, and we screened that before we went down the path because I just did not want to bring more of the same
Right.
to staff. And there were two reasons why we really identified HeartMath practices as what we believe to be like the gold star um, approach for educators for self-regulation, staying regulated in difficult moments, is because number one, they have over 400 peer-reviewed studies showing that their practices do what they say they're going to do,
Mm,
which is lots of health improvements, right? Like decreased blood pressure, decreased anxiety, decreased depression, improved health factors. Um, but they also are easy to learn. They're quick to use, and you can use them in the middle of a busy classroom. You don't have to go get in a closet somewhere for 10 minutes and do a mindfulness,
right.
those things are good to do, but when I'm a teacher in the middle of a classroom in a situation, if I've got something that I know I can do to make sure to bring my nervous system and cortex into sync
Hmm.
and regulate myself. So who uses HeartMath? Navy SEALs use HeartMath.
Athletes.
All special forces divisions of all the
Hmm.
branches of our military, Olympic athletes,
Hmm.
NFL players, PGA pro golfers. I always share that with teachers because I feel like they need to know, like, we're not teaching you how to chill and get calm on your couch in the evening and try to recover for the next day.
Right.
We're bringing something to you that is going to help you build your energy and your resilience, number one. Secondly, to be able to adapt in the face of stressful situations.
Hmm.
So it's like, so what does a Navy SEAL face that we face something maybe more difficult than that? Probably not, right? Like stressful situations.
Right.
And so that is the idea is they really need practices that aren't designed to be like good at relaxing in the evening.
Right.
They need practices that are designed to help you quickly get centered, get yourself, we call it entrainment. It brings your whole bodily
Right.
system into entrainment, and then you are able to stay clear-minded, make good decisions, not lose your emotional cool,
Mm.
and your recovery time is a lot shorter. You don't end up feeling burnout because your recovery, like you just like your body kind of comes back quicker, your brain comes back quicker, you emotionally come back quicker because they're designed to be, these are physiologically impactful practices. So that is our key go-to. Um, but I do think that along with the mutual care
Hmm.
is key, right? Because doing that in a silo still isn't. And
Right.
we've even had schools where they've gotten one of the technology devices from HeartMath, and they kind of had a little competition, but here was the competition. It wasn't like who could get the best heart rate variability, which is the focus of HeartMath practices.
Right.
It's not fair. Some people biologically can get that a lot easier than others. It was which grade level had the most consistent practice every month,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are we doing the practices every day? Because this isn't something you do like, oh, I see a crisis on the horizon. Let me do my heart
Right.
math practice, right?
Right.
No, we're doing it 3 minutes a day in the car on the way to work every day. You're going to shift your nervous system's ability to stay stable, calm, regulated.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the other thing too, that I thought about as Doris was talking about that is the concept of interoception, of becoming more aware
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
your body
Uh-oh.
sensations, the
Right.
emotions that you're having, so that you can recognize when you are getting overstressed, when you
Hmm.
do need a break, and to be able, just to gain more awareness of that, we know is so powerful in terms of our ability to control our emotional states and heal our own trauma.
Right.
And so that's a big one for me. And all of the things that we're talking about here too, I wanted to say, and we tell teachers that we do them ourselves. And
Hmm.
for me, it was like, okay, I see all these concepts out there. We've got heart math, we've got this, we've got that, but if they're not gonna work on me, I'm not gonna teach it. In other words, we've had enough of theory
Mhm.
That doesn't, you know what I'm saying? Where, especially in education, there's always some new thing that's coming down the pipe. And, you know, if we're not going to teach anything,
Yeah.
you're not going to see anything in that book that doesn't work. I mean, literally work if you will stay with it.
We had the blessing of the last 3 years we were still working for our district. We gradually were reducing our position. We were in behavior consultant roles. So it kind of became our lab, if I'm
Mhm.
honest, right?
Mhm.
Everything we now teach, we've tried it. We've used it with teams. We've done it ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think a capstone on the topic, Ginger, of the teachers and their self-care and their ability to stay regulated is that leadership and culture is so important.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
if teachers are operating out of a sense of fear that if I allow this student to, they need to really not be doing academics right now, they need to be doing something regulating, or a lot of teachers have shied away from this because of fear. Like, I'll lose control of my classroom. I'll look like a lousy teacher.
Right.
People will think, like, who let her have that job, right? And I think that in our book, we talk about it. Brene Brown, for those of you who have, read and listened to Brene Brown, I've listened to a lot, I've read a lot. She talks about the man in the arena,
Right.
right, from Teddy Roosevelt. And we talk in our book about, for many of us, this will be our man in the arena moment, where
Mhm.
we will be in there trying to meet a kid's need in a very unconventional way that hasn't been the traditional thing that's been done in our school. And
Right.
we get back up with spitting dirt out of our mouth and all over our faces. And do we have the culture to come alongside that person, whether it worked or it doesn't look like it worked yet,
Right.
and say, you were in there, you're in the arena, you're giving it your all for the kids, and support that person instead of like, yeah, see, I told you, didn't think that
Mhm.
would work,
Yep.
I,
Let's go
yeah,
back
I
to the
just
rewards
say
and consequences. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I
Let's
just
just
want to
go
say
back.
one more thing about system though here too, is that I really believe this. I believe that one or two or three people
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that begin starting to do this can start shifting the system.
Mhm.
You will see if as
We did
that.
that. We were the only two in our district. We were
Mhm.
the only two. And after a year and a half of starting to evolve this FBA, this functional behavior assessment process and behavior plans, after a year and a half, our district said, okay, you can offer a training at the end of the year, but it can't be during contract. We won't pay anyone to attend. You know, Teachers had to pay us $20 because we were providing all the snacks and the books, right?
Wow.
We
Wow.
just had the building. 20% of our district signed up
Mhm.
voluntarily the day after contract ended to take the training. Why? Because Rick and Doris are so amazing? No, because we sat in team meetings with these people around the toughest kids and they saw it work.
Mhm.
They saw the skill building. They saw the, focusing on neurocognitive skills, focusing on regulation for those kids that they had thrown their arms up and been like, we've done everything, nothing works. Let's just get this kid out of here.
Mhm.
They saw it work and they wanted more. They wanted to get better at it. They wanted to understand it. And so 20% showed up on their own to attend the training, which
That's
was
amazing.
amazing. Yeah, it was
Mhm.
really amazing. And it was a 3-day training. This is not a 1-day training.
Yep.
So they were, ready to go off on summer break and they chose to stay and learn. So,
Right. No, that says a whole lot. And
so
and you shifted a culture is really
yeah, Carrie, I mean, I really think it's vital for people to know that if you will stick in there, we've learned over time, there are a few key inroads, few key tools and things that you can use to
hmm
make those initial inroads that are very effective and will help to start to turn the ship. Um, and it's easier now than it was.
hmm
It's much easier. I mean, people are starting to hear more about the neuroscience just in the
Right.
general public, more
Yeah.
about trauma. And so we're not having to approach with a battering ram. We're being able to just knock on the door.
Right. Right. Well, it's never a surprise to Ginger and I that we would love to would love to keep talking, but we are out of time.
At
I'm
our
sorry.
time.
It's always
Yeah.
it's always a time thing. Um, thank you both for being here today.
Oh,
And
thank you
Thanks so much
guys.
for having.
Yeah, thanks for having us and for being such wonderful partners over
Yeah.
lots of different
yes, exactly.
venues.
Well, I wanted to, we'll put it in the show notes, but Doris and Rick help us on teacher troubleshooting sessions that are happening throughout this school year. We're doing even more than we initially did last year when we piloted with them. They're they're incredible sessions for educators. And so in addition to going out and getting the book, watch all of our communication at ATN to educators about when those are, so that you can be sure to get registered for those.
And Julie, there's one thing that I realized I didn't share about the book, if I can, like
Please.
half a minute. Okay. I really want people to know that one of the things that we set out to do, this really grew organically, but at the point that we wanted to really bring it to people in a way that they could take it and run with it, is that we knew we needed to develop the tools and the templates and all. Like, I don't want to just give you this knowledge and now make it up, figure it out. How are you going to make it happen? And so folks who purchase the book receive access to a resource portal. And there is literally a template for everything, like even things you might not need. There will be templates there you won't use every time. We also came up with some really phenomenally, I think maybe one of the things I'm most excited about are the student input tools that we came up with. How many of us had actually ever seen an FBA that had student input in it?
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that, I mean, when it hit me, I was like, what were we thinking? And so we've come up with a couple of student tools for those kids that we all know, where the teacher says, what would help you to feel calm or safer? And they're like, You're like, really, we want to help you. Like, what would help you feel calm? I don't know. And then the teachers feel like, well, I tried. And then we kind of give up because they can't come up with it.
Right.
So we have come up with some really scaffolded tools that help kids through recognition instead of having to generate the language, recognition of what they're experiencing, like Rick said, with interoception in their body when they start to get dysregulated. Like, we kind of cover the whole spectrum of where things happen along behavior lines. But the student tools, I think people are going to find really valuable, because I have been able to see us learn so much about what a student is experiencing and what would help them, where we were just at like a wall.
Right.
So anyway, the extra tools I think are really important, because to take this amount of information and try to now come up with your own way to put it together, and it's flexible. So if your district says you have to use these 6 forms, you can add what we have to that. It doesn't require that you just like only use this.
Right. Yeah.
So
they're for exactly what you need and how
adaptable. Yeah, very adaptable.
Awesome. What a great resource. Folks, we will be linking the way that you get a hold of Rick and Doris to the show notes, as well as their book, and which will then give you access into all of these resources that they just talked about. It's, we highly recommend that you check this out, or for yourself or for the educator in your life. Thank you both for being here very much. And thank you, listeners, and we will catch you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Regulated and Relational. In our next episode, Julie and Ginger speak with Sherry Crayer, and they explore the growing wave of vicarious trauma, moral injury, and systemic despair among school staff, and why the solution lies beyond individual self-care. A special thanks to Joe Kramer for donating the music. To learn more about the Attachment and Trauma Network, visit us at www.attachtrauma.org. I'm Lauren Cassis, and as always, thank you for listening.